Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the California Opportunity Youth Apprenticeship Grant informational webinar. I am Adele Burns, the chief here at the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, and we are very excited today to be talking about round 2 of the COYA grant, which will be for program years 2025 through 2027. So if we go to the next slide. So in today's webinar, our goal here is to go over, I'm going to go over an overview of the grant. And then we are joined here by our team from CORD. So Michelle Yoon will be presenting about the CORD platform, which is the platform through which you will be applying for the COYA grant. And then Anna Radu from the DAS funding team will be going through as many questions and answers as we can. So as many of you are likely aware, the deadline for questions has passed. So we have gone through all of the questions that we received and done our best to answer as many of them as we could. And that's what we will do here in this forum. And although I don't think we managed to answer all of them, but we tried to get as many done before today as possible. We will be answering all of the questions that we received by the deadline, and we will be posting those to our website. In this session, we will not be answering any live Q&A. However, you're welcome, if you feel that your question has not been answered, you're welcome to put your questions in the Q&A, and we will do our best to answer them in the publicly posted Q&A after the session. And I believe, so we will take note of additional questions that come in, but the deadline for formal questions has passed. So with that, I will dive into an overview of the COYA grant. So you can go to the next slide. So we are very excited to be announcing this, launching this second round of the COYA grant. And I don't know if you can advance the slides. So this next round of the COYA grant, it has the same goals as the first round of the COYA grant. Go back a slide, Anna. So the same goals in terms of inviting more opportunity youth into apprenticeship. Thank you, Anna. So our overall objective remains consistent for those who are familiar with round 1 of COYA, in that we are looking to get more opportunity youth into pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, and really to demonstrate the impact of these earn and learn programs on outcomes for opportunity youth in California. So in this second round of the COYA grant, we opened it up in late February, and we are making $16 million available in this round 2 of the COYA grant. So I'm going to go into more detail about the grant. If you go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, the enabling legislation around the COYA grant, it's kicked off in 2022 and 2023, and there were allocations in the subsequent 2 budget years. And really the purpose of this funding is to provide funding for both existing programs and to help establish new programs. And the intent is to be providing services primarily through collaborative, mission-driven, community-based organizations that have experience serving opportunity youth in California. So the overarching structure for this round 2 of the COYA grant is we have the planning grant category, which is has apprenticeship planning grant within it, up to $500,000. And then we also have implementation grants, and though in that category we have both pre-apprenticeship implementation grants and apprenticeship implementation grants. And as you can see, the performance period, again, I'll go into more detail on each of these, but overarching, it's a 2-year performance period. But we are certainly hopeful with the planning grants that your timeline is to try to get a program set up in a year, but we are leaving that flexibility up to 2 years for both categories of the grant. So if you go to the next slide, I will dive into the next layer of details on each of these categories. So for the apprenticeship planning grant, again, the funding amount is up to $500,000. There's no minimum here. You can tell us the funding that you think you will need to get a new apprenticeship program going, but it's up to $500,000. And the objective here is to support with the creation of a new registered apprenticeship program that aims to source opportunity youth apprentices. Or you could also be a community-based organization or similar such organization that is aiming to be a sourcing partner and supportive services partner to an existing registered apprenticeship program. So either of these objectives could be for the planning grant. And what we're looking for as a starting point is that we need a target occupation and employer group who wants to hire apprentices. Or if you're going in that sort of second scenario of being a community-based organization developing that partnership, you need to have an identified registered apprenticeship program partner that you're planning to develop this collaboration with. And so you will need a letter of support to validate this starting point. So you'll either need a letter of support from that employer or employer group that is excited to be developing a new apprenticeship program with you, or you need to have a letter of support from that target apprenticeship program that you as the community-based organization plan to partner with. So we are going to be looking for those letters of support to validate this strong starting point to the planning process. And then that means that the completion point, the deliverable on the apprenticeship planning grant is either going to be a new registered apprenticeship program or that formal MOU with an existing DAS registered apprenticeship program that formalizes that sourcing and supportive services for opportunity youth. One of the things that you will notice when you dive into the solicitation on this is that we are allowing some of the implementation costs to be in there. So if in your planning grant, you get to the deliverable that you were looking for, right? You register your program or you develop that MOU and you have remaining funding available, you can start using that funding towards the implementation, right? Towards those supportive services for apprentices. So we did build that intentionally built that allowable expenditure into the planning grant as well, because as we've learned from the first round of the COYA grant, we have a few planning grantees that have gotten to that deliverable point and are already diving into implementation, which is awesome. And we want this funding to be able to go towards that initial implementation as well. So if we go to the next category, we're going to dive a little bit more into the COYA pre-apprenticeship implementation grants. So with the pre-apprenticeship implementation grants, the objective is really to be supporting effective pre-apprenticeship programs that have strong linkages to registered apprenticeship programs and are prioritizing supportive services, training, and recruitment of opportunity youth. And ideally, you have paid training. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment, paid classroom training. So in terms of this grant, it is a requirement for this grant that the pre-apprenticeship program, of course, be registered with DAS, and part of that, the pre-apprenticeship program be registered with DAS. And of course, an essential part of that registration, which you've already demonstrated if you are a registered program, is that you have that memorandum of understanding linkage agreement to a registered apprenticeship program. That is a requirement of all pre-apprenticeships registered with DAS. Unique to this grant is that we don't want the pre-apprenticeship program to exceed 6 months. It's because we really want to see pre-apprentices getting placed into apprenticeship programs, because that's really where they have the opportunity to be earning and learning. So we want to be seeing that placement in no more, so the pre-apprenticeship program should not be more than 6 months. And very importantly, there cannot be any paid on-the-job training. So on-the-job training really belongs in the apprenticeship phase. And the intent of a pre-apprenticeship program is to be that initial training, that classroom training that gets a opportunity youth ready to enter into an apprenticeship. So there should be no paid OJT in a pre-apprenticeship. So in terms of the funding for this, the total grant amount can be anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million. And the calculation, really how much you're applying for, depends on the number of individuals that you're going to be serving through the grant. And the dollar amount is up to $12,000 per pre-apprentice that you plan to serve through the grant. And that works out to be half and half. So 6,000 of that 12,000 per pre-apprentice goes towards supportive services, training, recruitment, admin costs, basically all the other allowable expenses of the grant goes towards that. And $6,000 per pre-apprentice can go towards an educational stipend during the pre-apprenticeship training. And 100% of the stipend funding must go to the pre-apprentice. So this is really important. This is not a wage supplement. So this should not be a mechanism to be doing unpaid OJT, right? Like, this is not a wage supplement. This is intended to be an educational stipend, which means that they are receiving it during the training portion of a pre-apprentice, during the training, which is a pre-apprenticeship, right? So again, there should not be any paid OJT, but rather the intent of this educational stipend is to be funding that allows an opportunity youth, who we understand often opportunity youth cannot forego earning in order to do these training programs out there, right? And so we recognize that, so wanted to offer this educational stipend through the COYA grant. But again, this is not a wage supplement, and there should not be OJT in your pre-apprenticeship. It should be just training. Maybe it's like site visits or a little bit of shadowing, but it should not be OJT. Okay, so that is the pre-apprenticeship implementation grant. So to switch gears to the next slide with the COYA apprenticeship implementation grants. So the objective here is really to support effective registered apprenticeship programs that are serving opportunity youth, and to allow for community-based organizations or similar such organizations to create formal partnerships with registered apprenticeship programs to recruit participants and offer supportive services to apprentices. So much like with the planning grant, where you can either be creating a new program or partnering with a program, on the implementation side, it's the similar structure, in the sense that you can be applying for this grant either as the registered apprenticeship program that is specifically trying to source and serve opportunity youth, or you could be a community-based organization that already has an MOU linkage agreement with a registered apprenticeship program to do that recruitment of opportunity youth and provide supportive services to those opportunity youth apprentices going through an existing apprenticeship program. So it is a requirement that you already be a registered apprenticeship program or already have that MOU linkage agreement in order to apply for an implementation grant. The total dollar amount here, it's a similar range of $500,000 to $2 million, but it's only up to $10,000 per apprentice. So we really want to see that this funding is focused on supportive services for opportunity youth apprentices. And also it could be providing funding for getting a program, going and scaled. But we really do want to be seeing that focus on supportive services, and funding priority certainly will be given to those that have more focus of the funding on supportive services for the apprenticeship, because we do understand and expect that many of you may be braiding funding with this COYA grant as we outlined in the solicitation. So we know that there's other funding out there, often for paying for the training of apprentices, or even AIF, which helps to cover like the administration of the apprenticeship program. So really, we want to see these COYA funds being used to be focused on the supportive services, which we know are so important to opportunity youth being successful in apprenticeship. So if you go to the next slide, we've been just diving into all the mechanics of the grant, but I want to be sure to touch on the target population for this grant. So when we say opportunity youth, we're summarizing opportunity youth, and in the context of this funding opportunity, this includes individuals from 16 to 24 years of age, and a lot of this language is from the enabling legislation that allocated this funding, that the target population for this funding is for those who are at risk of disconnection or who are disconnected from our education system, those who are unhoused, living in concentrated poverty, in child welfare, juvenile justice, or criminal legal system, facing barriers to labor market participation, chronic opportunity, educational achievement gaps, attending schools in communities of concentrated poverty, or attending high schools with a negative school climate. So this was the language that was really in the framing of this funding. So if we go to the next slide, how we define this eligibility specifically for this grant. So if you receive this grant, you will be needing to demonstrate that all of your participants are eligible to receive the funding, to be like participants served under this grant. And so these are the criteria that every participant must meet one of these criteria. So they could be a current or former foster youth, current or formerly Pell eligible, currently or formerly WIOA youth or adult eligible, currently or formerly enrolled in a Title I school, residing in a high poverty census tract, formerly incarcerated, a youth parent, or a person with a disability. So we will, when we get to the implementation phase of this, we will provide some template forms that we will ask you to fill out with your participants to be sure that you're validating these different categories of eligibility. And as we get into the Q&A, there were some specific questions about these that we'll dive into, but this is how we define the eligible participants to be served under this grant. All right, so if you go to the next slide, so that's the eligible participants. Now we're looking at who are the eligible applicants to this funding opportunity. So any entity that is applying for this, the most important thing that we're looking for is that you demonstrate a history of at least 2 years of serving opportunity youth, and that you have demonstrated successes in supporting opportunity youth in access to employment. So that is really the most important thing that we're looking at. Of course, we also have this defined eligible entity type. So you could be a community-based organization, a nonprofit, workforce development board, union, an apprenticeship intermediary or program sponsor, or you could be one of the following local education agencies. You could be a community college, county office of education, K-12, adult ed, regional occupational program, or regional consortia of community college districts. Please note that for-profit entities are not eligible to be applying for this funding. So if you go to the next slide, to those of you here who are COYA Round 1 awardees, you may be eligible to apply for Round 2. So COYA Round 1 planning grantees who have completed their deliverables will certainly be prioritized for funding in the implementation categories. So if any planning grantee has registered their program, they will be prioritized for implementation funding. If you are a COYA Round 1 apprenticeship planning grantee and you have submitted your final draft of standards to the DAS program planning and review team by February 26th, which is when this SFP was released, you will be considered for implementation grants, even if you haven't gotten to that final phase of registration. COYA Round 1 grantees cannot apply for the same category of grant with the same occupations for which you have already been funded. However, if you have a different occupation, you can apply for a different grant. And COYA Round 1 grantees applying for a new grant category or with a new occupation must be in good standing with your current COYA grant to be considered for additional grant funding. So we go to the next slide. So that is the high-level overview of the different categories. And through your many great questions, we will be, Anna will be diving in a moment into the Q&A. But first, I want to talk next steps and timeline. So very important next step, please review the solicitation for proposals. What I have delivered here is the overview, but all of the really important details is in the solicitation for proposals on our website. And how you apply for this grant is going to be through CORD. So in a moment, I will hand the microphone over to our CORD team. But the most important thing here is that the deadline, well, excuse me, on March 31st, we are asking for a letter of intent. This just helps us in planning for how many reviewers we're going to need. So if you can submit a letter of intent by email, it is helpful to us, but it is not required. But most importantly, please take note, the deadline for applications is April 10th at noon Pacific time. So that is your deadline. So please, if you take nothing else away from this webinar, take note of that deadline. And all applications must be submitted through CORD. Nothing will be accepted, submitted via email. So with that, I am very happy to hand the microphone over to Michelle Yoon from the team that is behind CORD. So thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Great, can we go ahead and share my screen? Wonderful. So my name is Michelle Yoon. I'll be doing an overview of the technical aspects of the application platform, so specifically on how to register and how to get started on an application. So first of all, with user registration, the website for the application portal is going to be www.cordhub.org. We do ask that you use Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. If you use any other browsers, you may have some issues, so please make sure to use the latest versions of Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge. If you already have an account, and this could be possible for some of you who have applied to other grant opportunities, go ahead and click on sign in. And if you forgot your password, you can go ahead and reset it from the login page by clicking on forgot password. Again, if you already have an account, if you have accessed CORD previously for other grant applications, you do not have to create a new account, so you can go ahead and sign in. If it's your first time using CORD and don't have an account, you will need to create an account. You will be prompted some basic information as you create your account. The mandatory fields are going to be business or organizational email address, first and last name, and password. One thing that we ask is that when you are choosing the email address to create your account, you use your business or organizational email address using the business or organizational domain or URL. This is really key to streamline registration and can really help you later on when you assign the organization that you belong to. So the very first step before anything is making sure you have a user registration tied to your business or organizational email address. Once you log in for the first time, you'll be prompted to select an organization or business that you belong to. This is so we can tie your user account back to an organization or entity. So the very first thing that we ask you to do is to check if we have your organization in the database. So when you first, again, log in, you'll be prompted to link your username to a business or organization. And you can type in an acronym or the name of your organization and see if we have a match. If we have one, you can go ahead and join it. And again, it is important that you're using your business or organizational email address. So that streamlines the approval process for you to join an existing organization. If you do not see your business or organization in the database, you can go ahead and click on new organization. And when you click on that, you'll get a pop-up that asks you for the full legal name of the business or organization, the type of business or organization, and also the authorized domain. Again, similar to you using your business or organizational email address, it is important that you have a matching authorized domain. Again, this really streamlines future user account requests, specifically for those who are interested in having multiple people working in an application simultaneously. So yes, you can have multiple people working on one application together for your organization, but you do need to make sure everyone who registers uses their business or organizational email address. Once you register and link your account to your organization, you can go ahead and look for the application to apply for. So I think my thing froze. Oh, there we go. So once you do those two things, you can start an application. So you'll log into Cord. Again, it's going to be www.cordhub.org. Make sure you're using this specific link on Chrome or Edge. And you'll see a menu item called Networks. You can go ahead and click on Network and then My Applications under that menu item. And once you click on Start New Application, you'll be taken to a page that lists the different opportunities available at this time. So you can see a screenshot on the right. There's going to be those 3 different options for COYA. And depending on the specific one you want to apply to, go ahead and click on Apply Now. A quick reminder, just make sure you fill out all the sections and required fields, and make sure you upload all the required attachments before you submit your application by the deadline. We want to make sure that we have a complete application once you're ready to submit. And as Adele mentioned, all applications must be submitted online through the core platform. For those who maybe just want to see what the application, like the questions that we're asking you on the platform, there's a few links available here that you'll have after the webinar. The first one is going to be a PDF copy of all the COYA application questions as it's laid out on the Cord portal. Just flagging that this is for your reference only. Again, all applications must be submitted online, but we did want to provide a PDF version for your reference if you wanted to see everything that we ask you in the application. So that is available to you. And on top of that, section 9 is the upload section of the application, where we ask you to fill and upload a few attachments. So there are 3 documents that we provide templates for. So please make sure you're downloading the template for Exhibits E and F and the standard form 204. If you wanna, if you have different people working on those and just want to hand them off the template to fill out, we also provide a downloadable version here on this slide. So you can have the budget summary template, the budget narrative template, as well as the STD form 204 available. So again, the PDF copy is just for reference, and the templates are the ones that we want you to fill out and use to upload in the corresponding upload field. Some quick tips and best practices. So one thing that I want to ask everyone who's interested in applying for the COYA grant is to make sure you create your Cord account ASAP and you have all the permissions. You are able to see the menu items and everything at least a week prior to the application deadline. We would really want to encourage everyone to have, get started as soon as possible and make sure they have access and there aren't any issues with access. So when the deadline comes around, there's no scrambling and you for sure have access to the platform. Please, become familiarized with the application requirements ahead of time. You have the presentation from today to reference, as well as the SFP online. There are multiple resources available to you to just make sure that you're very clear what you're required and you don't miss, having to do something last minute. So be familiarized with all the application requirements and all the upload attachments you'll be asked to submit. Gather all the materials that will help you with your application narrative responses. That really helps with just getting started on grant writing. And if you have different people that are working on the application together, one of the suggestions is that you start a Word doc and start drafting them, and something, maybe it could be a shared doc amongst your staff. And you can also track the word count there. We do have a word count tracker in the core platform built in. But again, if you just want to start in a Word doc and then copy and paste into the platform, you can go ahead and do that. Just a flag, if you're copying and pasting from a Word doc into the core platform and your response exceeds the word count limit, your response will be cropped. So just please make sure that you are paying attention to the word counts. There are also some fields that are going to be required and some questions that are going to be conditional. So required fields are things that you must submit depending on your selections or the application that you're submitting. And conditional questions are going to be fields that are going to depend on maybe previous selections or things that you are interested in. So please make sure you're paying attention again to the required fields, as well as note that there are some conditional questions too, depending on how you respond to certain questions. And lastly, save your progress as you go. You're able to save and come back to it. You don't have to finish everything in one sitting. And again, you can have multiple people have access to the application that you're working on. Only submit your application once you're 100% sure your application is complete and everything is final. If you ever want to revert your application, it's a manual process and you'll have to let us know way in advance for us to revert it. So we just highly recommend that, if you get started early and you still have a few days before the deadline, make sure you review everything is correct and final before clicking the submit button. If your submit button is sort of washed out, that could mean that maybe there's something missing, or there's a field you haven't filled out or an upload that you haven't submitted. So please go ahead and review every section to make sure you've filled out all the required fields. And last but not least, just a few additional resources available to you for how to use Cord. There's a step-by-step guide on how to register and link your account. The guide is the first link. Is very similar to the presentation I've done today, but just has a few additional details. We also have a recorded version of what the platform looks like, and step by step on how to register. And the third resource here is a Cord commonly asked question doc. It's only specifically to Cord technical questions. So flagging that you won't have anything regarding the program. So that is really, please make sure you're reaching out to the correct individuals for any programmatic questions. For Cord specifically, again, we have an FAQ, and that's the third link here. And at any moment, if you have some technical issue, let's say you're getting an error, or you're getting an error trying to upload a file, again, for any technical core-related questions, you can go ahead and reach out at support@corehub.org, and we'll do our best to troubleshoot your specific core technical questions. But again, anything programmatic, please go ahead and make sure you're reaching out to the DAS team. And with that was my last slide. Thank you so much. I'll pass it on back to Anna.
Perfect. So one of the questions that we received is, what is the eligibility criteria for nonprofit organization partnering with high schools and industry leaders? So again, just looking back at the SFP, it does share with you all the eligibility and entity type, which is nonprofit, workforce unions, local education agencies, and then apprenticeship intermediaries and apprenticeship programs. The other question is they would like to know whether a workforce development board can move forward with applying for pre-apprenticeship implementation and partner with an entity that has experience in apprenticeship to fully implement the proposed project. So pre-apprenticeship implementation does aim to support pre-apprenticeship programs and have a strong linkage to our RAPs and prioritizes supportive services for and recruitment and opportunity youth and can offer educational stipends to allow paid training. And again, they just must meet the registration with the AS, provide memorandum, and then program length cannot exceed 6 months, and programs should not have any OJT hours as part of their program. Is a center that is operated by a government agency eligible to apply for the planning grant? And is there a match leverage requirement? Please advise. There is no match leverage requirement, but based on the description, it sounds like the organization and community, and in which case it is eligible. After four-year college is university eligible for this funding? Unfortunately, no, not unless they're already a registered apprenticeship program sponsor. This one's a two-part question. So is this securing a planning grant a prerequisite to submitting a proposal for implementation grant? The answer is no. And is there a minimum amount of time pre-apprenticeship programs have been registered with the AS for them to be eligible? And no, that is not the case. What was the plan? What is the maximum we can apply for the planning grant for pre-apprenticeship and minimum of students, expectation outcomes, grant year, 2 years? There is no planning grant for pre-apprenticeship for this round of COYA grant. And does the apprenticeship planning grant include pre-apprenticeship planning grants? No, not for this round. So page 3 of the S&P lists that sectors such as healthcare, educational, advanced manufacturing, information technology, public sector, transportation, and more. Can a program connect with the hospitality industry to apply? Yes. Now this one is a longer question, but we would like to apply and develop a formal apprenticeship program for a trail building and maintenance. This field work has vast employment opportunities in the public sector, recreation, and is fire prevention mitigation adjacent. Is this industry type eligible for this grant? As defined in the enabling legislation for the funding, the eligible sectors include IACA sectors, fire trades. However, eligible sectors do not include building trades. And based on the information provided, this occupation is likely a land management or fire trades, which will likely be ineligible as IACA or fire trade sector. However, more information will be needed to provide eligibility. But that does not dismiss the applicant to apply. We will just need more details in their application. Is the required minimum number of individuals served by the program? Our apprenticeship program serves 6 apprentices in a year-long cohort and have been in operation for 4 years. Would this allow us to qualify for the potential funding? For apprenticeship implementation grant, the range is $500K to $2 million. The award amount is up to $10,000 per DAS registered apprenticeship. Therefore, the minimum project and number for participants served is 50 participants over the 2-year performance period. On page 1, it states that the funding amount for AP grants is $500K. Is there a minimum amount that must be requested? No, that goes for every single grant that you're applying to. There is no minimum cap. SFP states that in no circumstances can funds be used for food or beverage costs. However, in case of culinary apprenticeship, which food is a necessary and reasonable learning material cost in delivering technical training and hands-on practice, are food purchases allowable if it only benefits awarded activities? Yes. For an AP grant, are costs for minor renovation of instruction space allowed to be funded by the COYA funds? No. Because and then it's asking apprenticeship planning grants, is instructor space rent considered a direct program? If space used for instructional purposes would be considered a direct program cost. However, rent for office space is an indirect cost. I understand that the grant's midpoint, we would demonstrate at least one or both of the following: that the certain number of guarantee spots indicate within the RPA's MOUs were fulfilled, that 60% of the apprenticeship pre-apprentices have been placed in DAS register programs? Can you define guarantee spots as per the number listed in your MOU with the registered apprenticeship program? Is the full amount of pre-apprentices for the grant? That would this will be evaluated the rate of placement in DAS registered programs based on those who have served to date through the grant. If we were to apply for funding for a total of 50 apprentices but serve 25 in year one and year two, 25, does that meet the requirements? Yes. If the grantee fails to meet one or both of the above conditions, the second half of the grant award may be withheld. If we enrolled 42 pre-apprentices minimum required, is there a minimum requirement for how many of those students then go on to our apprenticeship program? We have found that there are always some students who don't complete our program. At the grant point, 1 year into the grant performance period, the pre-apprentices implementation grantee for the apprenticeship program should demonstrate at least one or both of the following: that the certain amount of number of guarantee spots indicated within the RPA's MOU were fulfilled, or 60% of the pre-apprenticeships have been placed in the DAS register program. That a certain number of guarantee spots indicated within RPA's MOU were fulfilled. Our grant is to place eligible students within the 6-month Fire Academy, which is a pre-apprenticeship training. There are a total of 4 academies scheduled during the upcoming 2-year cycle. We wanted to confirm the above statement referencing the guarantee spots within the pre-apprenticeship training 6-month period, correct? No, any registered pre-apprentices will have an MOU with the registered apprenticeship program. In that MOU, there may be guaranteed numbers of spots for pre-apprentices to be placed in the RPAs. This is referring to that number of pre-apprentices that graduate into guaranteed placement in the registered apprenticeship program, and that being fulfilled. And the SFP has stated that applicants to this funding must already be in a DAS registered program or be a CBO or workforce educational partner that has a formal MOU with an RPA. To the degree that we have been issued DAS register file number 2, our DAS register name, have approved and vetted registration with Department of Labor, anticipating being added to the DAR's apprenticeship database. Are these criteria sufficient to indicate that we already are a DAS register program in our COYA grant application? A DAS register program means that you are fully registered with DAS and not partly through the process of registration. For the apprenticeship planning grant opportunity, when the SFP says or to create a formal MOU with an existing DAS RPA, that formalizes the relationship between the eligible entities with the RPA, which must include at least the recruitment of opportunity youth into the apprenticeship and also offer supportive services for opportunity youth during the apprenticeship. Are these supportive services intended to be funded and provided through the planning grant? If the intent of the apprenticeship planning grant is to develop a partnership with existing RPAs for sourcing and supportive services for opportunity, then the final deliverable is the formal MOU, which specifies exactly how the eligible entity is helping to recruit opportunity youth and providing supportive services to opportunity youth apprentices during their apprenticeship. The planning grant can include both the cost of developing that partnership and also some of the initial supportive services actually provided. Please confirm that a CBO applying for the apprenticeship planning grant can have the objective of formalizing an MOU with an existing RPA and does not have to create an RPA. That is correct. An apprenticeship planning grant can be used to develop a formal memorandum of understanding with an existing DAS registered program that formalizes the relationship, which must include at least the recruitment of opportunity youth into the apprenticeship and offers supportive services for opportunity youth during the apprenticeship. For applicants seeking to partner with DAS registered programs, the proposal will need to identify the DAS registered program, occupation, and need a letter of support to validate that interested partner. What are the final deliverables for the PI grant. The guidelines mention at midpoint deliverables after 1 year, but does not mention a final deliverable. At the grant midpoint, again, 1 year into the grant performance, the pre-apprenticeship program should demonstrate at least one or both of the following: that the certain number of grants guaranteed spots indicated within the RPA's MOUs were fulfilled, and or 60% pre-apprentices have been placed in DAS registered program. If the grantee again does fail to meet one or both of the conditions, the second half of the grant may be withheld, and the final deliverables is serving the participants as contracted. Is this a requirement? Is this a requirement for the RPA partner to commit to providing these supportive services in the future with funds outside of the planning grant budget? No, this is not a DAS requirement. Can applicants to the COYA AP grant use funds for implementing activities and apprenticeship placement? Yes, if during the 2-year performance period when the planning grantee registers the apprenticeship program as expected and gets the stage of implementation, then the funding can be used towards implementation on costs such as supportive services and instructional costs for apprentices. Would you like to know? We would like to know if indirect cost rates approved by California Department of Education are acceptable and can be included as part of the program budget. The indirect cost rates for CA Department of Education are not relevant to DAS and DAR. Administrative overhead costs are limited to 10% of the grant, and this includes costs such as administrative and executive team salaries. For the apprenticeship planning grant opportunity, when the SFP says that administrative overheads are limited to 10% of the grant award, this includes costs such as administrative and executive. Does this place a limit 10% of indirect costs plus the direct administrative and executive time and materials required to manage the grant? Yes. Is there any flexibility on cap of 10% room for overhead? No, administrative overhead costs are limited to 10%, and this includes costs as administration and executive team salaries. For the apprenticeship planning grant opportunity, when the SFP program evaluation section says 10 points for entities that have not received the CA grant, is this just for CA grantees related to the same proposed industry occupation or CA grants received? Reviewing the proposal evaluation in the RFP for the COYA grant, I see that entities that have received it are penalized or are not eligible for a portion of the points in that particular section. Is this any CA grant or CA grant for the same occupation as the COYA application? It is referring to CA grants for the same occupation. Funding priorities will be given to primary applicants that have not already directly received CA apprenticeship innovation grant for the occupation for which they are applying to the COYA grant. We currently have a youth apprenticeship program registered with DAS, which follows a 3-year time-based model. Through this grant, we hope to create additional opportunities for the same occupations using competency-based model and make those registration apprenticeship. Would this initiative fall under the apprenticeship planning grant or the apprenticeship implementation? Since you have a registered program with DAS already, this will be an implementation grant. On page 10 of the PI program, it states that the program length cannot exceed 6 months. Our program is at least 1 year, sometimes 2. The juniors and seniors in high school take 1 or 2 classes per semester and then go to OJT volunteering each summer and are placed in local ECE facilities. Why is there a 6-month limit, and are there exceptions to the rule? There are no exceptions to the pre-apprenticeship implementation grant requirements, although since you are describing OJT that is only associated with the apprenticeship program. Since pre-apprenticeships do not have OJT, therefore the apprenticeship, if this is an apprenticeship program, then you should be considering apprenticeship implementation grant. Excuse me, I don't know what is going on. My internet connection is really low and it is not moving my screen. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and see what's going on. Chad, are you able to share your screen? For some reason, it blocked me out. Thank you so much. So funding opportunities will be given to those applicants that utilize more of, oh, excuse me, of the funding for supportive services in their proposal. Can you define supportive services? Does that include professional training? So again, the supportive services are inside the SFP, and so supportive services are defined as services that directly benefit the participants in the program, which include the following. And you can read more about that inside the SFP for more details. Next question. I'm going through the application and found that I must list a partner already with DAS registered program. I'm a little confused as to why this is necessary, as ours would be a new apprenticeship. Is this for mentoring and their existing experience? This will depend on the category of funding that you're applying. If you're applying for implementation, then the applicant must have be either of the following: DAS registered that targets opportunity youth, community-based organization, nonprofit, eligible workforce organization with an MOU to a DAS registered program for recruitment of and supportive services for opportunity youth apprentices. Thank you. Next. Is it a requirement that our apprenticeship program is registered with DAS to be eligible for this grant? Yes, for the apprenticeship implementation grant, the applicant must be one of the following: DAS registered, targeting opportunity youth, or the following with an MOU with the DAS registered program. Next. Can the same team apply to both the apprenticeship planning and pre-apprenticeship implementation grants? Yes, as long as you meet all the requirements for each, you will need to submit 2 separate applications. Is my organization required to collaborate with existing CBO, DAS registered pre-apprenticeship or registered apprenticeship in order to apply for an apprenticeship planning grant? For applicants seeking to start a new program, the proposal will need to identify an occupation, employer group who wants to hire apprentices, along with letter of interest or support for an employer or multiple employers. For applicants seeking to partner with DAS program, the proposal will need to identify the DAS registered program and occupation and need a letter of support to validate the interested partners. Thank you. I have a question about eligibility for applying to this grant. Our organization is currently subcontracted of a current awardee to this grant. We partner with them to recruit and perform case management. Given this circumstance, are we still eligible to apply for this grant? Yes, you are eligible to apply as long as you are not the lead applicant in the current COYA grant, and if awarded, you cannot report serving same apprentices under both grants. The participants served must be unique to each grant. As COYA Round 1 Apprenticeship Implementation Grant recipient, what is the metric that will determine eligibility for a second round? COYA Round 1 grantee cannot apply for the same category grant with the same occupation for which they are already being funded. Round 1 grantees applying for a new grant category or with a new occupation must be in good standing with their current grant, COYA grant, to be considered for additional COYA grant funding. Can we have the effective start date of the pre-apprenticeship implementation grant on November 1st and continue to use the planning grant until November 1st? Round 1 grantees applying for a new category or with new occupation must be in good standing with their current grant and be considered for additional grant funding. This is not flexible on the start date or performance period due to the timeline of the spending authority. We are a pre-apprenticeship planning grant and intend to use the full 2-year performance period ending June 2026 for the planning process. If we are applying for and receive round 2, would we require to terminate our round 1 performance period? Specifically, would we need to begin implementing our pre-apprenticeship program at the start of the round 2 performance period, even if we still have a year remaining on our grant? This is not flexible on the start date or performance period due to the timelines of spending authority. Therefore, if you were to be awarded COYA Round 2 grant, the performance period would need to commence around June 2025, completed by June 2027. Ideally, there would be overlap There will be no overlap in activities contract, although it is possible as long as all the reported expenses participants serve are clearly and fully distinct across the two contracts. COYA Round 1 planning grantees who have completed the deliverables will be prioritized for funding in the implementation categories. Therefore, Round 1 pre-apprenticeship grantees, you must already be registered with your program to be eligible for the implementation grant. Thank you. For Section 4, eligible applicants, COYA Round 1 grantee applying for a new grant category or new occupation must be in good standing with their current COYA grant to be considered for additional COYA grant funding. All applicants in associated registered apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship program must be in good standing with DAS to be considered for funding. Can you define good standing regarding our current grant? How will this be verified? Grantees must be up to date with all reporting, demonstrating progress towards outcomes, which is based on contracted deliverables and reporting. In addition, the register program must be in good standing and not be suspended or in deregistration or cancellation process with DAS, or have outstanding evaluation findings that have not been resolved. Thank you. If a student has a learning disability, receives the accommodation through our college, do they qualify? Do learning disabilities qualify for eligibility? Any suggestion on navigating determining disabilities and HIPAA allowance questions for prospective eligible students? Grantee must obtain proof of that a participant meets the eligible requirements. The documentation obtained must be kept on file in case of a grant audit, but does not need to be provided to DAS/DRR in the reporting process. For people with disabilities, due to the sensitive nature in dealing with disabilities and collecting of type of information, an individual can validate their eligibility through completing self-reporting form. The grantee should be able to show their linkage and affiliation with health agencies that have sent over potential participants to the program. Thank you. Formally enrolled school, is this referencing a high school, or can it be any K-12 school attending to determine eligibility? Eligibility can be met through attending any TK school. To look up whether the school is determined a Title I school, utilize the ed.com website. Look up the schools and its status as Title I as determined by the California Department of Education. In Section 4.4 target population, one of the eligibility is currently or formerly enrolled in Title I school. What is Title I? I suppose there's a typo. Title II funded schools like local adult and education provider would be would make more sense. Currently or formerly enrolled Title I school. To look up whether the school is deemed Title I, utilize the same link as the other question. The school and the status is determined by California Department of Education. A participant does not need to have graduated from Title I school. However, attendees can be proven by diploma, a transcript, or official letter of the school stating attendance. In Section 5.4 branding, there is an exemption to leverage AIF if the applicant and its project partners have not received AIF. How can we satisfy this requirement? This only applies to potential grantees that do already receive AIF funding. It is not a requirement to receive AIF funding. This section is just outlining that it's possible to brand AIF in COYA funding. Thank you. Can an applicant submit one application and potentially receive more than one award? For example, can an applicant submit for the AP grant proposal for the fire trades and submit pre-apprenticeship planning proposal for advanced manufacturing? Yes, all of those are separate applications and it's also separate occupations. Does a program need to be DAS approved at the time of the application or by the time that the grant will start? The program must be registered as of February 26, 2025, when SFP was open. The only exception to this is that Round 1 apprenticeship planning grants that have submitted their final draft of standards to the DAS planning and review team by February 26, 2025 will be considered for implementation grant. Thank you. An organization recently registered a new RPA A curriculum and program framework have been developed. Students are ready to apply, but the program could benefit from more planning. Is the organization eligible to apply for either apprenticeship planning or implementation? If so, how do they decide which is the best direction? The planning grants are designed for the planning of a new unregistered program. The implementation is for programs that are registered and actively running cohorts. For the planning track, is there an expectation that we are piloting the program by the end of the grant period? If the intent of the apprenticeship planning grant is to develop a new RPA serving opportunity youth, then the final deliverable is the registration of the program with DAS. Ideally, the new program's design should interrogate relative and supplemental instructions with linkage to higher education systems, such as the apprentices that can build their education portfolio while going through an apprenticeship. If the intent of the apprenticeship planning grant is a partnership with an existing RPA of sourcing and supportive services of or for opportunity youth, then the final deliverable is the formal MOU, which specifies exactly how the eligible entity is helping to recruit opportunity youth, providing supportive services to opportunity youth apprenticeships during their apprenticeship. In all cases, the final deliverable should also include program implementation and funding sustainability plan. Thank you. What are the minimum and maximum numbers of classroom-based training registered apprenticeship must be complete? The recommended minimum is 144 hours of relative supplemental instructions. What are the minimum maximum numbers of on-the-job training registered apprenticeship must complete? A new apprenticeship program should be designed to be a minimum of 2,000 hours of on-the-job training. Although it is competency-based program, an apprentice could complete those competency in as little as 1,000 hours. What is the required minimum wage for apprentices? DAS recommends designing a program that meets ETP new hire wages as outlined annually and by county. Is there a PDF of the entire application so that we can view? Yes. Is an intent to apply required or just recommended? Recommended. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you all being here. We will post this recording and everything on our website as soon as we can, and we just are very grateful to you all. Again, if you need to reach us or have further questions, you can send the questions, but we will post them up on our website as well. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.